Hello, I'm David Hunt, and welcome to my little section of Bent TV. My guest today, born in Burma, but it's not called Burma anymore, but we'll get to that a little bit later. In the 60s, his parents quietly planned to move from the whole family from where they were living, and they were going to head off to England, but ended up in Perth, as you do, like close to each other, England, Perth. And that happened in 1971. And the extended family arrived as well, part of them then, and then the others as well. So they had a whole family unit in Perth. Raised as a Baptist, very holy. I had to genuflect when I met him for the first time. A strong church community. He went to Sunday school until he was 15 because he forgot how old he was, so it ended up being 15. In the 80s, things all changed for him. Fashion and music really changed, and the whole culture of the wonderful 80s. And you should hear the music he chooses. It's so disco, it's so boring. He'd have to be gay. He just has to be gay. To the extent where it was all about the goth and new romantic look. And he couldn't buy a lot of the clothes. So do you know what he'd do? He'd make him himself. Again, how gay is this guy? That's what I want to know. He started going out to clubs with straight friends because, of course, he wasn't gay, and then spent a little bit of time in England, and then ended up here in Melbourne. And he's been here for quite a while now. 25 years ago, he moved here, working for the state government. And some of the projects he was working on was, major projects, Fed Square, Crown Casino, the Southern Alps. He was part of the management team of all the Southern Alps that the government owned, and then volunteered at Joy. And that was where, unfortunately, I met him. And he's like a bad smell. He keeps on hanging around all the time. Neil de Vaz, hello.
Hello, David.
And what a wonderful journey you've had. And when I asked you to do this, I thought to myself, let's do it because it's such a great journey of where you've come from. You were a little kid. How old were you when you...
When I arrived in Australia, I was just before I turned 8.
Right, okay. Yeah. Now tell us about Burma. What's it called now?
It's called Myanmar.
Right.
And that changed after we left Burma.
Yep.
And obviously with the change in regime. But yeah, it was Burma in those days. It was an old British colony, so it was part of the Indian Empire at that time, years ago. But we left, Mum and Dad, decided that they wanted to leave Burma because the opportunities weren't going to be there for us.
But what I love about it is they were teaching you kids, you and your siblings, English, because knowing that you were going to end up in an English-speaking country.
Yeah, and I suppose because Mum's sort of heritage she's got a bit of English, English in her heritage, and so we spoke English at home most of the time. I mean, Mum and Dad spoke Burmese, obviously, and we're very strong.
Can you still speak it?
I can't, no. I can understand bits and pieces of it. But I really can't speak it. I've tried, but I just butcher it completely. So,
yeah.
So no, but my older brother can, and he's only about 4 years older than me, but he sort of, I suppose in that formative years, he did a bit more schooling in Burmese. So he actually learned to read Burmese, and I think that actually helps with the speaking.
Yep.
Whereas I can't even, I can recognize the script, but I can't read it.
Right. So what was the main reason why your parents wanted to move away?
Mum and Dad decided that I think that it was in the sort of the mid 60s. It was a military dictatorship of a socialist government.
So was it? You wouldn't have known.
No,
what you
I don't
were told,
remember.
But how
just
bad was it?
From what they said, the opportunities wouldn't have been there for us. I think they just felt that the opportunities that they wanted us would be better off either in England. At that time, it was originally England because my mum was a British subject because of her heritage, and so we were sort of all planning to go there. And in fact, my uncle, one of her brothers, actually went to England about a few years before everybody else, and actually set up home there. So he was like on a mission to get established,
get the ball rolling.
And so he went there, And then I think about 3 or 4 years later, all the plans changed. He had settled down, got married over there,
Right.
started his own family, and then my mum and dad decided, I suppose, is probably the wrong word. The circumstances led to that because the issue at that time was that my mum's family was all going to go to Burma, so go to England, but my dad's family had not made no plans at that stage. But then once they saw that we were making plans to leave, they all decided they wanted to actually also leave Burma, and they couldn't get into England
Because they didn't have that.
Yeah, they didn't have the citizenship.
Right.
The
So how
citizenship.
hard was it to get
Oh, look,
visas to
it
come
took a
here?
while because mum and dad had to, it wasn't just getting into Australia. It was actually leaving Burma wasn't always easy. There wasn't like that much free movement around.
Right, okay.
Mum was going to come out because she had a British passport. Dad didn't really have like passports and stuff like visas and things. So we actually came out on a travel document.
Right.
So
you boat people.
Except we came by plane. As I kept telling people, we came by plane. Yes, that's right. So my dad had a travel document, and us children were all on his document, and mum had her passport,
Right,
her British
okay.
passport she came with.
You were 8, so you wouldn't have that big a memory of Burma.
Not too much. I mean, you remember little things. In fact,
And it's more probably people, the family talking about it, wouldn't it?
It was more family talking about it. The only sort of things that are quite vivid in my mind, and this is probably not the sort of thing people want to know about, but the sort of toilets that we used to have. I remember that because they were outdoor toilets, and there wasn't sort of like general plumbing. So I remember things like that.
Wow, so it's very...
it was holes. You had metal chutes and holes that you had to use in the backyard.
Wow.
And so that was and we had sort of mostly there wasn't running water, so it was all with wells and things like that.
So
I
were you
remember
living
that.
in a town? Or?
Yeah, it was sort of in the like a suburb of the main city, but they're like little villages basically.
Okay.
So, but we had our own house and our own compound. But you tend to live in extended family, like in a family. So my mum and dad had their house, but we had my grandmother lived there, my aunts, and then my dad's family were from the north of Burma, so they would come and spend time with us quite regularly.
Right.
So we sort of, when the people say about being raised in a village, that's what we were. So we had like our extended family around us all the time.
So that like with them moving to Perth as well, the extended family.
And that's probably the reason why they all wanted to come, because they saw the same opportunities. Because my mum is one of 4 children, and so we were all planning to do that. My dad is one of 9 children. Exactly. So there was a lot more of them to sort of come to Australia as well. And so so that's when the plans all started.
Right.
And I think it would have taken them probably about 4 years or so to get it all organised, because I think when they were planning it originally, there was only the 3 of us children.
Yeah.
And then my younger brother came along about 3 years after me. So so it definitely took 3 or 4 years to get it all sorted out.
And how was it growing up in Perth? Was it easy, or were you, you hear about horrible things at school and stuff like that?
I think when you're really young, you don't notice these sort of things. You sort of, you're different. Obviously, this was back in the sort of the early 70s, mid 70s, and we, I went to a school where I suppose there were a lot of people who were a bit different, but there weren't too many Asian-looking people, and I suppose I also didn't really identify too much. You sort of, I don't know, you don't think about these things when you're 8 years old.
Yeah.
And then because we spent so much time with our family units, because we already had some aunts and uncles that arrived before we got here. So, I had cousins who were, all a little bit younger than me, but, within the sort of five or 6 years of, sort of age group. So most of our weekends were all spent with family.
With family,
so we would go visit my aunts, or we'd go see, my grandparents came a bit later. Well, my dad's parents came about 4 or 5 years after us. But before they did, it was just usually our aunts, our cousins. We would, we'd all pile into the Volkswagen sort of, station wagon, and sort of all, sort of
go to the beach.
And then we'd all be sitting. These were the days before the seatbelts and stuff, and all of us kids would just hop in the back, basically, just where there's no seats. Where you normally put the luggage. That's where we used to sit, and we just go to the beach, or go to each other's houses, and Actually, yeah, that's the sort of stuff. Even holidays, family holidays were all, usually with my aunts and uncles and.
But then that all changed in the 80s, where music and the pop culture really gripped you, and so therefore your friends that you had were they school friends or
They were. I mean, what tended to happen? I suppose it started happening a little bit more as I got into high school, sort of times, and the thing with that was that then you sort of realize you try and find your own sort of space, I suppose, in your own thing, and then the family sort of because we were a little bit older than my cousins. You always, when you're a teenager, you don't want to mix with 9 and 10-year-olds.
No.
And so you start looking around for other teenagers. And so I met, a group of friends. That's when I think that's when you also notice things a little bit more, like when I said about you don't notice your differences. I think as you get a bit older, you do. And I think kids also become a little bit more pointed in pointing out their differences and your differences.
Yeah.
And so, that's something that I think you notice. And so you sort of gravitate towards things that people that you like or you associate with, music that you like.
Now, how did your parents cope with you? Because you would like put makeup on and go out in the new romantic era or the goth era, and making your own clothes because you couldn't buy a shirt that buttoned up across
with the diagonal sort of button up basically.
So what are they? Well, they must have been sitting there thinking, oh, well, what have we got here?
I don't know whether they really did. I think my mum and dad didn't
just
really
accepted.
Yeah, they just didn't think too much about it. I don't think they associated, things like that with sexuality or anything, or lifestyle or anything else. I think, and to be honest, I didn't either because, I think I grew up with my mum and my mum sort of sewed for my sister every so often. My aunts used to sew, so we all used to sew, they used to sew for each other. And, so in that sense, that was almost a given. And one of my uncles, was also gay, but which wasn't really sort of overly sort of talked about, and so he sewed as well. So it was sort of like
it was just there.
It was, and it wasn't like I did that much, but it was just as I got a bit older, I also had a friend who was really into sewing, and I think we just decided to start making our own clothes every so often.
Okay.
And so that was my sort of creative outlet as well, because mum and dad just didn't even think about that.
And at that stage, you had you realised that there was something going on that you might be gay?
Yeah,
or?
look, I think you do. I mean, I sort of did, but I think as you mentioned earlier on, I grew up as a Baptist, going to church, every week.
And your parents are still quite involved.
Yeah, and they are very, they've got a very strong faith. My mum and dad, my dad also. When you mentioned about me going to Sunday school, one of the reasons I used to go to Sunday school every week was because my dad was a Sunday school teacher.
Oh no!
So so we all got taken to this church.
Yeah.
To church. And
Yeah.
And it was just, and at that time it was something that I didn't think much more about. And plus, with kids my age, we used to so there were also things that had in common. So you sort of go along to these things. You don't really think about it being sort of from the religious aspect of things. It was just more seeing other kids your own age. And, so that was, and then. There was one thing besides that, because we used to do that. My dad also used to be involved in the boys' brigade, which is the church. So I used to do that as well. So you see, that was my life around those days.
But that was all changing.
It was all changing
with the music,
and it was, and that's
clubs,
when I started
gay clubs.
And that's when I sort of started looking, thinking to myself, well, I'm not sure that this is really me, and then when you sort of start realizing that maybe you were a bit different from everybody else, and the girls didn't quite were more friends than anything else, and you weren't really quite attracted to them, and you didn't see, and when other people start talking about their attraction to girls, you just think, oh, I don't really have that, So I don't know. I think it's a very common. Well, I'm assuming it's a common story for a lot of gay men, gay teenagers. You start looking around, exploring for your own tribe.
Yep.
And unfortunately, in those days, there wasn't much, it wasn't a very visible tribe.
Perth.
In Perth, and I think most places, I mean, we're talking about, 70s, before you start, I suppose getting into the 80s now. And so you sort of look around. I mean, I knew, there were obviously, there were clubs, and I knew there was, I knew there was gay people, and I knew people who were different, but there were always, just the way I was raised, it was just something that, you don't really sort of talk about. And, it's not something that you sort of choose basically.
But you didn't have any friends you chatted to about it?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
Right.
So it was just really more. It was all in my head.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, and I suppose that also determined how I sort of came about. How I took things on board. I mean, you become very insular. I mean, I had friends, but they were always a little bit arm's length. You sort of you don't really sort of make any sort of real deep connections with people. Because there's a little secret that you don't want people to know about.
That's sad, Neil. That's sad.
But I think
But you're fine with it.
yeah, look, I am. I think over time, I think I'm okay with it.
Now you moved to England, and that opened your eyes a lot. Going to London.
Yeah. By that stage, I was actually working already, so I was my late 20s by that stage.
Yep.
So I already had been going to clubs, and I sort of. I think people around me knew. I was just never verbalized. I never actually ever said to anybody, I'm gay, and this is me, sort of thing. But I think I started. I was a little more flamboyant with most things, as you said. With my eyeliner, I learned to put eyeliner on pretty well. So and then in those days, liquid eyeliner just come out.
Yeah.
This is fabulous.
Hey, look at you.
Exactly.
And how was London?
I think I grew up being a little bit risk averse with everything. So when I started working and everything else, I didn't feel comfortable sort of packing up my job and leaving. So I actually surprisingly went to London when I actually got a long service leave for my job. So I actually took a year off to go and sort of and the plan was I'll go somewhere different, and this is an opportunity for me to more or less live a gay lifestyle and come out.
Oh, okay.
And that wasn't the only thing, but that was the side. That was the side benefit. So I even remember when I sort of started the journey. I had my little journal. I was going to start journal everything along the way to see. I think the journal lasted maybe about 2 weeks after I gave up. But then also, I did have family, I had like an aunt that was in England who I could stay with. And so that was a good sort of way to start settling in. But then after a while, you sort of, get a bit too settled doing things, and then I thought, oh no, I don't think I'm coming to do the things I was planning to do if I stay with my aunt, who also is going to church every Sunday and was a bit disappointed that I wasn't going with her, because by that stage I decided I wasn't going to be going with her. But then I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a little bit difficult. And so then I had to start looking around. So that took me about 2 or 3 months to settle into a bit of a routine. And then I sort of then thought, no, you know what? This is my chance. I'm 28 years old now. I've got to make the step out of the closet. And so I found there was a little like a social group in London, which was for Australian and New Zealanders abroad, for gay and lesbian Australian people abroad. And they had like a drop-in centre, gay and lesbian drop-in centre, and in those days there was only the G and the L as well, and so it was a gay and lesbian drop-in centre near King's Cross, and I would go across town every, from Ealing, which is like a good half hour on the tube, go in the city, and that took me maybe about 4 attempts before I actually went in the door.
Hey.
I went to the train, I'd go to the train station, I'd look around, I knew where it was, I scouted the building, looked at the door, could I get through it? No. Then eventually it took me about 3 or 4 attempts to get in there, and surprisingly, when I got in there, I saw a familiar face, because there was a friend of mine that I worked with in Perth.
Oh, wow.
And I knew he was gay, and it just so happened that he was in London at the same time, and we ended up in the same thing. And then through him, I met a friend, and so I sort of broke the ice a little bit, and circumstance, it just worked out really well.
Right. And then you ended up in Melbourne.
Yeah, I did.
You've been here 25 years, is that right?
After I came back from London, I sort of, that's when that's the time when I left home, and that's when I came out to the parents, and
Why Melbourne? Oh, you came out.
I came out in Perth.
Yes.
Before all of this.
Yeah.
And then that's when I moved out of home. I started sharing. I started going out a little bit more.
But how did you react? What was your reaction like with your parents?
It was by that stage I already moved out of home, so I actually made the effort to go and see my mum and dad. I thought I'm going to sort of. I did all. I think I did all the research. I read all the books. On how to do the coming out. if nothing else, David, I usually plan things quite well. I'm quite detailed in my planning, and so I sort of thought this is what I have to do. So I sat them down. My dad was a bit busy at the time. He was sort of getting ready to go out, I think, at the time. So I sat my mum down. We started talking. Started explaining. My mum, she cried basically. But that was more because I think she thought about things that she thought I'd be missing out on. My dad was in and out. He knew, he heard what I was saying, but it was almost like sort of like, oh, I don't, like, why are you telling me? I don't need to know. And plus, it was also more from the point of view of an acceptance. I don't need to know, not a oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to, I don't want to hear that sort of stuff. It was just more of a, oh, okay, and just moved on, for him, and it was a bit of a non-event, really. I thought to myself afterwards, but
you want dramatic.
I did. I wanted flares to go off.
Yeah,
I wanted,
and the dancing girls coming out.
And nothing happened, and so it's sort of, then we just carried on,
and so you never really spoken about it much.
No, not really, but I was okay with that too, because I think my family weren't the sort of people that really sort of talked about our sort of personal lives too much. I think we all there to support each other. We all love each other. We all know how, but we don't really express it that often.
And your siblings, you don't talk much to them about being gay?
Close, no, because it's just something that, we didn't, I don't know, because I never had a boyfriend. I never sort of formed. And I think if I had one that I brought home, I reckon we would have. But at that time, I was still sort of, I think trying to come to terms with all the acceptance myself.
You've never had a partner?
No, I haven't. I sort of, no.
And how do you feel about that? Do you think, or would you still like one?
Probably not anymore. I did for a long time.
Because a lot of people say, it's never too late.
I get that, and I'm not shutting out to it completely. But I'm not also actively searching.
Yeah.
I think
likewise with me.
Yeah. I've done all that sort of, the searching and I just was never really very good at it. I didn't think I was really ever good at it. And so I just couldn't be bothered. I went out clubbing, but I was more interested in the dance, the music, than anything else.
Yeah. And the eyeliner.
And enjoy having a good time. So, I'd go there with my friends, I'd dance, but then I'd go home alone.
Yeah. Favourite artist, Donna Summer?
I might surprise you. I have a few, and it does cross genres. You do realise, David. I know I love my disco, but I love my electronic dance music.
Yeah,
okay. So I think if I was to say it, I'd probably say to someone like Human League,
right,
or even Joy Division.
Yeah.
Joy Division
before.
Oh, and so I think I really loved all that sort of music.
Okay.
So I did. I have a very eclectic taste.
No, you don't. Most of the time
I revert to Donna a lot.
Yeah.
But I think I actually think it's the female diva icon more than anything else, because my favorite artist, Madonna is a definite favorite of mine. So is Donna Summer. So is Blondie. And Blondie's not really a disco diva, but I still.
Well, she sort of is. Heart of Glass is very much. She holds a mirror ball.
Well, in that one song, but not the other stuff.
No. Well, they were. Like sort of the leftover of the punk era,
like the Ramones, the New York punk scene.
So moving to Melbourne, why?
Why
and,
Melbourne?
Yeah.
Look, I think I sort of knew that after making the sort of the decision to go to London, come out, sort of accept that part of my acceptance and everything else. I still felt like I really didn't have a tribe and my own little niche, and I think it was more the fact that by that stage, all my friends that were all school friends that I'd maintained contact with, and we kept in touch. We were all married by that stage, having families, and so I thought, okay, well, I need a whole new network of friends, and at that stage, I started. I think by that stage, I was already sort of heading towards my mid-30s, and I was still hanging out with like 20-year-olds through work. And I was having a good time, but I thought, I'm not sure this is where my life should be going, and plus work was also changing. I'd been working since I was 18, and I'd been working at Social Security, the whole time. And I thought, it's time. I don't think I can keep working in this job till I retire. and so that's another 40 years of my working life. Because I did a little stint in Canberra as part of my job with Social Security. And I just knew that if I wanted to keep working with them, it would be probably going to Canberra, and I couldn't see myself going there.
No.
And then I thought about Melbourne, I thought about Sydney, and Melbourne just had a more attraction because it reminded me a lot more of London. That's really, to be honest, that's what it was. You know, like it was that was the attraction, and also it was just a lot more sort of comfortable when I came here.
Here you are, and you're pretty much not going anywhere. You know, like you've got your own place, and although you're thinking you might move suburbs, but that's by the by.
Yeah, look, Melbourne is I think my home now.
Yeah,
I think
sense that all the time.
Look, and I think maybe initially I thought, okay, it's a nice little adventure. Let's see how it works out. But 25 years down the track, I think my adventure is continuing here.
Yeah.
If I have any more adventures, it'll be other forms, not really moving.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy in Melbourne. I think I found my tribe in Melbourne, and I think that's probably also maybe another reason why I think I'm a bit more not so worried about partners and everything else. I think I think you can form strong connections with people and not necessarily have to be on an intimate level. And I think that I've got that with friends.
And Melbourne people are very, like friendly and not, like you can meet it.
Yes,
click with people.
Exactly. And look, I think I have quite a strong network of friends and quite a variety of people as well from different backgrounds and diverse backgrounds. So I think I've got and I think that my tribe itself is actually quite varied. I found that I think after searching for my tribe all these years, I think what I've discovered that is I probably belong to several tribes, and I think I like to be, and I don't want to shut one off in favor of another. And so I've got that variety.
That's great.
And I think that's where I find I'm quite the most comfortable with.
And you're also involved in the show that I hear is groundbreaking and does all this amazing stuff. And like it's got millions of listeners every week.
And there's this guy that feels like he owns the whole place.
Right.
But,
okay.
Yeah. So
what's the show?
Yeah. I started volunteering at Joy and joined this show called Sunday Arts.
Sunday Arts Magazine.
Sunday Arts Magazine, which is on.
Get the name right.
I know, with these arty-farty people that just come out every week and interview people that
And how amazing is it? Isn't it the best fun?
To be honest, yes, it is. I have loved every moment I go on that show, and that's also I think made me a lot more comfortable in Melbourne and with friends, and also in the gay community. I think I would dip my toes in and out of the community throughout the years, but I think since I've joined Joy, I'm all in basically, and I think that's where I see probably a bit more involvement maybe with Joy as I sort of move into as my working life slowly ebbs out and everything else. I think as I have more time.
But isn't it the excitement of hearing about the arts, on Sunday Arts, because we have the most interesting people and from all walks of life in the arts.
I love it. And I love the fact that we don't, when we start talking about people, I love hearing their stories. I love hearing how focused they are, on things. And because you and I both know, David, that people in the arts have to run off an oily rag basically, and they live from one show to another.
Yep.
And then they've all got day jobs, and I find that so amazing and so brave that people do that.
Yep.
And I think to a certain extent, I think maybe that's the level of braveness that I didn't have, that I would have maybe, I think to myself, maybe I do. I mean, we sort of all, I think I'm happy I got to where I am and the path that I've taken. But then you just think, things for these people are a little bit different. And you have to sort of, I think you have to support them and applaud them because of that.
There's hardly any support.
And that's why I love doing the show, because I just think that, in our little, 2 hours a week, I think trying to get the people to try to put the spotlight on artists and Dave, and I have no point telling you, David, but for our listeners, is we like to sort of highlight all the arts and all ranges. People who are well established, from emerging artists. People that try various things. especially, I mean, I love it when we talk to a lot of the fringe, you know, like people come out because, you know, or, you know, people who just putting on their own show, you know, like they've got their own flyers with them and they've got friends handing out flyers for them. And
Yep.
you know, I remember one of the we interviewed, remember when they were coming across from the, you know, from Adelaide in their own car, you know, with just everything in for the show in the car. And I just
And they wouldn't make any money out of
and it
that
just
show.
shows
But they just had to get.
but it's a passion that they
Yep,
have, and
yep.
and that to me is the best part of our
Yep,
show.
yep.
You know, meeting those people every week.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today and sharing your life with us. I've learnt so much more about you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, like all the naughty things. No, we didn't even get on to
We didn't
any
get to the naughty stuff, did
things.
we? There wasn't any then.
Yeah,
That's
there
why I'm
wasn't
still
any.
single.
Neil Devarge, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you, David.
And I'm David Hunt, and I'm going now because that's my little segment over for this show. See you later.